Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and welcome to a discussion, rather, not a review per se, where I talk about four audiophile terms: bright, warm, neutral, and colored. All four are somewhat related, and I just wanted to do a series where I talk to beginner audiophiles, and I talk about why beginner audiophiles, and I talk about these terminologies and what they mean and why they're problematic to use willy-nilly and without much discretion. So, guys, I've been in the hobby for a bit of time now. I've been reviewing for at least 3 years, and my experience, my journey with music goes far back, of course. Ever since I was in my early teens, I was listening to audio cassettes, and then I moved on to CDs. I had a CD player, a boombox, and I had a massive collection of CDs and audio cassettes. I still recall those wonderful Geffen audio tapes that I used to gather. It was very difficult back in the day, in the 80s in South Asia, to get all these cassettes in, but I worked hard to source them from the US, from the UK, because my dad used to travel a lot to the West. Guys, so I'm not a stranger to sound. I'm also somewhat quite qualified to talk about the frequency response because I've had quite a training in math. I've done a math minor in college. I've done investment banking, and in a certain role in investment banking, which was very math heavy. So I'm very used to seeing a graph. I've analyzed the stock charts to death because that was my job. And I used to sort of sell stocks. Not sell as in peddle. In some ways, I guess I was peddling. So I was a broker. I worked in a brokerage house for several years, right? Analyzing stock performance, looking at candlestick charts, looking at different ways of putting numbers on a chart and finding different ways of calculating moving averages, 7-day moving averages, 52-day moving averages, trying to find the area under the graph using integration techniques, trying to find the slope for complex graphs using differentiation techniques. I've been trained to do that. So graphs are pretty natural for me. Even now I'm a researcher, so a lot of my reports will have a lot of primary data, survey data, and I make sure my sample sizes are adequate. I look at the confidence interval of the sample sizes because if you have a universe of, let's say, 1,000 people, you'll need a certain sample size. If you have a universe of, let's say, 30,000 people, you'll need a different sample size, often bigger. And then if the universe of people you are interviewing, or let's say, for example, I want to interview everyone who likes ketchup, I'll have to take into account geographical variations of that universe. I'll have to take into account gender variations in case there's a gender correlation with preferences in ketchup, age variation, and a whole lot of others, even income, guys. So creating a perfect sample is a work of art, and it does take a lot of research prowess. So luckily for me, I was trained in this. I say luckily because not just because I review for audio stuff, it's also because I do this for a living. And I've been pretty critical of the Harmon research, and I've talked about this. I've read the research, and I don't think the sampling technique is robust. To start with, it's not variegated, and more critically, it's a very small sample. And to some extent, some of the research suggests that the sample was a bit biased, meaning that they talk about Harmon-trained listeners that they use the sample on, which is a pretty arbitrary term, and I think it has some problems. So, to start talking about the term neutral, I have always had an issue with the term neutral because, this is the poster child of neutral, or maybe its brother, the HD600, because this sounds good with almost every genre. That's what people say. Now, I disagree. I don't think this works with hip-hop or trip-hop, and as a matter of fact, because the bass punch is a bit wanting. And on some tracks, I feel like the upper mids are a bit too shouty. Now, this has a very softish timbre, so that upper mid shout doesn't get as pronounced or annoying. This also can sound a bit lean because of the lack of, I think. So this doesn't sound lean per se, but let me just correct myself. But the Harmon target can sound a bit lean. Now, if you took the focal Utopia, and then because people will have you believe that everything tuned to Harmon will sound good, and if you EQ it to look like or sound like Harmon, and you take this and you EQ it to sound like Harmon, because this is not exactly Harmon, this is sub-bass roll-off, a little bit more mid-bass warmth and all that, what you'll find is that the focal Utopia sounds a lot thinner than this. Because EQ is not going to rob it from its essential characteristics, and this does have a thicker sound. Utopia has a thinner sound on the stock tuning. You EQ both, you'll feel, I guarantee you, that the Utopia will sound thinner. It's not everything EQ to the same target sounds the same. That's, I think, pretty evident, but perhaps not for everyone. This whole concept of neutral is a problematic term. First and foremost, because epistemologically, it doesn't make sense. Because if I listen to Shania Twain, the target curve I need will have to have certain adjustments for Shania Twain. It will have to accommodate her voice, the pitch of her voice. If I listen to Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots and his maybe solo adventures, that target, that graph, will have to accommodate his more baritone voice. Because an elevation in around the upper mids and lower treble will help Shania Twain's voice. It will not help Scott Weiland's voice. If I listen to rock and metal, I might need to feel the weight of the rhythm guitar, especially if I listen to a track or a band that has a lot of heavy riffs. Metallica has a lot of heavy riffs. They were called the Riff Master, if you might recall. James Hetfield has very heavy, deliciously heavy riffs. For that, something like the Camphor Trifecta works because it has a lot of mid-bass. Now, the same IM might not work if you listen to some jazz or classical music where the mid-bass can perhaps slow or have them create the impression of slowing the music down, slowing the track down, making it sound a bit cumbersome. If you listen to large-scale orchestra, something like the 8800 works because it has those sort of treble energies that make it sound very spacious. Guys, so what I'm saying is, you can't have a target for every genre. You can have an average target, of course. And maybe that's what Harmon tries to do. And that's a comeback you'll come back with. But you can't have a target for every genre. Even within a genre like heavy metal, you'll have subgenres like doom metal, like symphonic metal, etc., thrash metal. And within these subgenres, you will have different instruments dominating. And because different instruments need different levels or different kinds of frequency response ranges to perform, to be present, you can't have a target graph even for the same genre because subgenres have different instruments that are more emphasized than others. So the idea of a target graph doesn't make a lot of sense. It's useful. And people say, yes, it's useful, we know, and it's not the be-all and end-all, and it's just a reference graph. That's the best we have. And then they say, oh, this headphone deviates from the Harmon target, it's colored. Or that this headphone is not tonally accurate, which is a diss, which is, of course, a critical remark. And so no matter how much people try to get away from the Harmon target as being the be-all and end-all, that doesn't work because too often, too many people, the greater part of the audiophile community, want the assurance of a target curve because they don't want to waste their money. So they want some predictability. They want to see a graph and be able to predict whether they'll like the sound or not. And too often, Harmon being the sort of average crowd-pleasing target, that's what it is, the crowd-pleasing target, I think has started catering to people. But if you see a lot of Harmon aficionados, they get bored with the Harmon target tuned IMs that they have or headphones they have. IMs more generally have Harmon tuned tonal representations. You will see that people will get a Harmon tuned IM and then move on to the next best thing that's also Harmon tuned because they get bored of it. Because when you first listen to a Harmon tuned IM, you like it because the upper mids are in your face. So you get vocal clarity and you feel like you're getting a lot of resolution for your money. And Harmon tuned IMs have sub bass. You get that initial joy of getting sub bass thump. But over time, I feel like if you listen to a lot more stuff, you grow out of it. If you have an open mind and start listening to more colored tunings. So I use the word colored in air quotes because something that is colored vis-a-vis Harmon can be natural for a certain genre. And no one listens to all genres of the world equally. That doesn't happen. If you look at my listening preferences, I maybe listen to 40% rock and metal and then the rest. Some people might be listening to 90% pop. So for most of our listening cases, for most of our libraries, one or two genres tend to dominate, guys. It's not every genre under the sun. But if you happen to like every genre under the sun, if you dedicated equal amount of listening time, I could see how Harmon could be sort of this haphazard target curve for you. But it's rare. So by that I mean there is no neutral, guys. I mean, yes, there is Harmon neutral, but do call it Harmon neutral. Don't just call it neutral. Don't call it neutral. Stop. Call it Harmon neutral. And it might work for you, and I really would wager that if you've listened to enough colored tunings, if you have an open mind, if you're not worried about being criticized by other community members who create this pressure cooker sort of a cartel or herd-like mentality of Harmon, worshiping or worship, because it starts to sound like science, and that there's a science that determines what we should like, bereft of our anatomies, bereft of the biology and the variations in biology, significant variations in outer, inner, and middle ear anatomies that all of us possess, and age, and mood, and so many other things that affect how we perceive sound. So, I don't know. I feel like I just wanted to say that, guys, if you're beginning or starting this hobby, you look at the Harmon target for sure, but take it with a pinch of salt. Try 3 different tuning profiles and see what you like. Or ask us. Ask people who are very experienced in this hobby. Go to the water cooler thread on HeadFi. HeadFi is amazing. Go to water cooler. HeadFi has something for everyone. It has something for Harmon worshippers and for others who are more mature in their tuning choices. If I did a video on the 10 levels of maturity, I would say sort of like the highest level is when you're not looking at target curve at all, but you're still looking at it because it's nice to look at. No, because it does tell you something about the sound of an IM, but not always. And you'll find very breathtaking exceptions to Harmon, meaning you'll find an IM that just looks breathtakingly different from the target curve, but still sounds amazing. Tip rolling, for example, the campfire trifecta can make it look very different graph-wise from as you move across tips. And I've talked about this. Do check out my campfire trifecta video, because I feel like it'll be a very useful primer for you if you want to understand the limitations of the Harmon target. So, if you agree that the Harmon target is limited, then you agree that the term neutral is limited and problematic. So, take it with a pinch of salt. If you're a beginner audiophile, I implore you, take the term neutral with a pinch of salt, and by extension, take the term colored with a pinch of salt, because the term colored can be a good thing. We sort of qualify colored by saying it's tastefully colored. Everything is colored. Harmon is colored. Harmon sounds thin to me. Harmon sounds shouty to me. It doesn't sound natural to me. And therefore, I think it's colored. Everything is colored. Whether it's tasteful or not is subjective. So everything is colored, guys. But when people use the term colored, what they mean is that it deviates from Harmon. Like with this headphone, people will say it has colorations in 3 areas. Mid-bass, a scoop in the 2 kilohertz range, and then the spike or added energy in the air frequency range. So 3 spots of coloration. That's just not the right way of talking about it. It does help to understand what you mean, but then I think it just indirectly places too much emphasis on Harmon as the be-all, end-all, as a way to tune headphones, which is very problematic. Very, very problematic. I think to some extent it's killing innovation in tuning and tuning choices that we could have enjoyed had we not had this one target lording over us all. Okay, so and the reason why I want to talk about the term bright and the term warm is that too often people will start the hobby with this, which is a warm headphone, because it does have a big treble roll-off and has a mid-bass energy and mid-bass warmth. And then they'll experience something like the Focal Clear, because people will tell them that the Focal Clear is an upgrade to the HD650, and people will say the Focal Clear is bright because it has this 1 or 2 treble peaks. The Focal Clear is peaky in the treble. It can even sound metallic in the treble, but it's not bright per se. This, some people will say, is bright because of its air frequencies, and some will say warm because of its mid-bass. So what is it? Is bright warm? Bright and warm are very, very confusing terms, and I would urge all of you to use these terms with a pinch of salt. Don't be reductionist in your speech. Maybe get into discussing and detailing what you mean, if possible. If not, just don't say it's bright or warm, because if it isn't. There are headphones that are warm, like the LCD4 is warm. It's almost dark. There are headphones that are bright, like the HE1000 SE is bright because it's got this huge treble lift. From lower treble, mid treble to upper treble is big lifted treble, counterclockwise tilted. And you'll have headphones that are clockwise tilted. So I think those are more easier cases. So this is warm, this is bright. But most headphones are not bright or warm. They're a mixture of the two. Because you can have treble sharpness, but it can be balanced out, or you can have mid-bass warmth, or you can have a headphone that I think is just out and out bright and out and out warm. But at the beginning, the journey of most audiophiles, people will come to me and say, hey, I like a warm headphone. And I'll be like, hey, so how was the Crimson for you? Oh, it was bright for me. Fair enough. How was the HD600 for you? It's a bright headphone. Fair enough. How was the Hi from Ananda. It's bright. It's bright. It's bright. So what is warm for you? And people will say, this is warm for me. So that narrows your pool, guys. If anything, I think you guys should be trying out headphones with a bit of treble, because once you train your ears to listen to treble, and a lot of people will say, I don't need to train anything. Why do I need to train my ears? I like what I like. But hear me out. If you train your ears to like treble, you like a lot of other headphones which do treble well. And once you become someone who appreciates treble, you'll see that there's a lot of joy to be had. Because headphones are often slow burners because they might sound a bit peaky to you at first, but you play around with the source synergies and you find something that is more palatable for you. Over time, that's not going to get boring for you, even in a year's time or later. But headphones that are just Harmon tuned can get boring for you, and you'll be looking at the next best thing. There's also Harmon tuned very soon. So that's it from me, guys. This was just meant for beginner audiophiles, just to share some mistakes that I myself might have made. Because too often we get caught up in bright and warm and neutral and colored, as if these four terms just justify or explain the entire hobby for a lot of us, because they don't. It's a very subjective hobby, as it should be. And we should be ready to think about the sounds that we like, and we should be ready to understand our journey. And as we mature or as we get used to a sound of a set of headphones or IEMs and how that might change, our relationship might change. It's a hobby where you don't just pick out something you listen to at a audio festival or a friends meet and just dismiss. I've had people come into my house just to take pictures of stuff that I've had to claim that they've heard it, and just dismiss an entire headphone on the basis of like 1 minute of listening. I had this guy who came in, who was supposed to be an audio engineer, who listened to my Susvaras for a minute, and he decided Susvaras were not up to the mark. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to share some views on how to approach the hobby for beginner audiophiles. I hope this is useful. I'll do more of these. Let me know if you like these videos, and I'll do more of these for beginner audiophiles, because I don't think I've addressed that part of the community as much as I have addressed the more summit-fied types. And I do think it's useful and interesting for me as well to do these videos. But I hope this was useful, guys. And I would urge you to like this video if you like it, and follow my channel. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.